Hi everyone, how are we? It's good to see you. As you all voted, many of my students overwhelmingly wanted me to review market power. Okay, so I'm about to review market power. Remember, this live stream is only for higher level students. So if you are doing economics standard level, you do not need to be here. This entire section is higher level students. So let's get started, shall we? All right. So as I said, this live stream. Hi, Chor. How are you? This live stream is for higher level only students. Please remember, if you are standard level, you do not need to be here. This is just gonna confuse the heck out of you, and you'll panic. You'll be like, "Oh my God, I never learned this." Okay. So this is for higher level only students. Before I start, I need a favor from you guys. I need you guys to like, share, comment. I need you to become a member. Okay, support the channel. All right. These weekly live streams have been very successful, and I thank you all for becoming members, those of you who have. Okay. The links to support the channel and become a member are all in the video description below. A simple like, a simple share, a simple comment, I respond to all my comments, are all things for the YouTube algorithm. All right. This pushes my videos up. All right. So let's get started. So we are going to look basically at market power, okay, as a source of market failure. Okay, having excessive market power can often lead to market failure. So we'll start with the market structure that does not fail. Remember, market failure, basically, market failure means no allocative efficiency. That's essentially what it means. If a market fails to achieve allocative efficiency, then it has failed. So we'll start with which market structure actually achieves allocative efficiency. The only market structure that achieves allocative efficiency is the perfectly competitive firm. Okay, so I'm going to teach perfect competition first as the market structure that achieves allocative efficiency. And then I'll teach the other market structures that do not achieve allocative efficiency later. Okay, so what happens in a perfectly competitive firm is that the firm is so small compared to the size of the market that the firm has zero market power. It cannot set its own price. Hi, Aditya. How are you? It cannot set its own price. All perfectly competitive firms produce homogeneous products. There are no barriers to entry. Anyone can enter or exit from the market. Okay. So what happens is the industry, remember, the industry sets the price. The interaction of market demand and market supply determine the equilibrium price, PE. And then the perfectly competitive firm takes that equilibrium price as given. Remember, a perfectly competitive firm is a price taker. That is the demand curve that the single firm faces. It's also its marginal revenue, its average revenue, as well as its price. So P equals D equals MR equals AR. Okay? This is how a perfectly competitive firm is a price taker. It takes the price that is set by the market, the equilibrium price, and then it doesn't have to make a pricing decision, basically. It doesn't have to decide what price to charge. That price is given. Aditya, I already have a live stream about that topic. You can find that in the playlist of which you can find in the description below. The playlist has a live stream on demand and supply side policies. All right, fabulous. So as I said, all perfectly competitive firms are price takers. Okay. Now, once the firm takes the price, there could be one of three scenarios in the short run. So in the short run, one of three possible scenarios. But in the long run, only one scenario. And I'll talk about each of those scenarios. Okay? All right. So in the short run, if the price that is given, okay, it's a price taker. If the price is higher than the firm's average cost, it will make an abnormal profit. If the price is lower than the firm's average cost, it will make a loss. And if the price is equal to the average cost, the firm's average cost, it will make a normal profit. Okay. Remember, all firms can achieve any of these possible scenarios in the short run. Maybe there's one firm that makes an abnormal profit because it's efficient and its average costs are low. One firm that's making a loss because it's not very efficient, its average costs are high. And one firm has, its average cost is exactly equal to the price, right? So these are three possible scenarios in the short run. How is this determined? Remember, first, you take that price and you see where it intersects MC, because the profit maximization condition is MR equals MC. Remember, profit maximization happens when MR equals MC. This is point A here in the diagram. Then you draw a vertical line. This gives you the profit maximization quantity Q1. Now at Q1, what's the average cost? It intersects the average cost curve at point B. So remember, first, find the intersection of MR and MC. Then find Q, the profit maximization quantity. Then at Q, see where Q intersects the average cost. And that will help you determine whether there's an abnormal profit, a loss, or a normal profit. Remember, if AR, which is the price, is greater than AC, there will be an abnormal profit. If AR is less than AC, there will be a loss. You can see here, MR equals MC. The intersection is at point D. You draw the line, you find the profit maximization quantity, you extend that line at point C. This is where AC intersects Q3, and that gives you the average cost. This firm is making a loss because its average revenue is less than its average cost. Normal profit will happen if AR is equal to AC. Okay, so again, you see here, this is the intersection of MR and MC. You find the profit maximization quantity, and it just so happens that same intersection is also the intersection with the AC curve. All right, so as I said, there are three possible scenarios in the short run, okay, which is either abnormal profit, loss, or normal profit. But there's only one possible scenario in the long run. Only one, which is normal profit. So in the long run, all perfectly competitive firms can only achieve normal profit, which means the level of output where AR is equal to AC. There's only one possible scenario in the long run, and it's this one here. Okay? Why? Because if some firms are making an abnormal profit, this will attract new firms into the industry. This will increase market supply. So the market supply curve will shift to the right, which pushes the price down until those abnormal profits disappear. If there are many firms making losses, some will exit the market. So the market supply will decrease, which pushes the price up until those losses disappear. And that's why, because of free entry and exit, which is one of the assumptions of perfect competition, if there are any abnormal profits or losses in the short run, they will disappear in the long run, and all firms that remain in the market in the long run will earn only a normal profit. Okay, so remember this: three possible scenarios in the short run: abnormal profit, normal profit, or loss, and only one possible scenario in the long run, which is normal profit. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. While we're doing this, like the video, press join, become a member. I have a practice question, by the way, for members only for this topic as well. And there's more coming up because I know the exams are coming up. So let's talk about allocative efficiency. Okay, the condition for allocative efficiency for the market is MSB equals MSC. A market where marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost is a market that achieves allocative efficiency. But on the level of the firm, allocative efficiency happens when P or AR, let's call it AR, okay? AR, average revenue, is equal to MC. So if all the firms are producing the level of output where AR equals MC, then the industry will experience allocative efficiency, which is MSB equals MSC. So let's see. In the long run, we know that in the long run, All perfectly competitive firms earn a normal profit. Remember, the profit maximization condition is MR equals MC, which is this point here. Okay? And this is the profit maximizing output. This is the output produced by one firm. At that level of output, you can see that AR is equal to MC, right? Because AR is equal to the price. So in the long run, all perfectly competitive firms will achieve allocative efficiency. Why? Because if they are profit maximizing, MR will equal MC, and MR always equals price, and price always equals AR. So in the long run, all of these conditions are satisfied. The condition for profit maximization as well as the condition for allocative efficiency. Now remember, the only market structure that achieves allocative efficiency is perfect competition. All the others do not. Okay? Does this mean we should get rid of monopolies and oligopolies and monopolistically competitive markets because they don't achieve allocative efficiency? No. While there is a lack of achieving allocative efficiency, there are certain benefits to allowing these markets to exist, like the fact that they provide variety. Monopolies invest lots of money in research and development and innovation. So my point is, just because they don't achieve allocative efficiency doesn't mean we need to get rid of them and turn all markets into perfectly competitive markets. Not at all. This is not what we're arguing. Okay? All right. So any questions about perfect competition before I move on? Remember, there's the assumptions of perfect competition. There are many firms. They're all producing homogeneous products. There are no barriers to entry, and all firms are price takers. Where do they take the price? From the equilibrium that is established in the market. Okay? They do not have to decide what price to charge. They only have to decide what output to produce. Sure, that's a good question. Is perfect competition very rare in the real world? Yes, right? In the real world, perfectly competitive markets are very rare. You can think of the foreign exchange market, for example. Many agricultural markets, like farmers markets and so on, also are close to perfect competition, if not exactly identical to perfect competition. But yes, they are very rare in the real world. Okay? They are very rare. Why? Because we like variety. The world would be so boring if all markets produced homogeneous products, right? We like variety as consumers. We want innovative new products and so on. So that's why societies do allow monopolies and oligopolies and monopolistically competitive markets to exist. But that's a good question, Troy. Okay. All right, so let's move on to imperfect competition. Now you'll notice the first difference. Okay, first of all, perfect competition have the same MC and AC as imperfect competition. But here you start to see a separate average revenue and marginal revenue curve. They are split. Okay, so remember, in perfect competition, the AR and MR are the same. But in monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition, they are split. D equals AR, so the demand curve facing the firm is the AR curve, which is also the price. And then the MR curve is twice as steep. Remember, you see where MR intersects MC. It's this point here. MR intersects MC. You extend down to find the profit maximizing output. This is the profit maximizing quantity. And then you have to extend the line, see where it intersects AC. So that's AC. And you have to further extend to see where it intersects average revenue, and that's your price. Now, remember, if price is higher than average cost, there is abnormal profit. Okay? If, again, MR equals MC, draw a line. Here, you've got the quantity that the firm should produce. Then extend the line. It just so happens at QE, P equals AC. If P equals AC, then this firm is making a normal profit. And again, MR equals MC, extend the line, get the quantity, then extend the line up. Here is P, and here is, sorry about that, here is AC. If you extend that line, here is AC. In a situation where AC is higher than the price or average revenue, there is a loss. These are the three possible scenarios in an imperfectly competitive market or a monopoly, in the short run as well as the long run. Why? Because we assume in monopoly, right? We assume that there are very significant barriers to entry. So remember, a monopoly market has high barriers to entry, which means if a monopolist is making an abnormal profit, these high barriers to entry prevent competitors from entering the market. So the monopolist that makes abnormal profit in the short run can actually maintain those abnormal profits into the long run because of those high barriers to entry. What are examples of barriers to entry? Things like branding. Branding creates customer loyalty. Okay, so customers are less likely to switch to any competitors that enter the market. Things like patents. A patent is a government permission basically for this to be a monopolist, the monopolist over this particular product. Things like trademarks, copyrights, all of these things create barriers to entry. And thus, if a monopolist makes abnormal profit in the short run, they can maintain this abnormal profit in the long run. Now, what if a monopolist is making a normal profit? Well, the monopolist either has to try and be more efficient and lower their average costs, which shifts the AC down, or they can try and use promotion and advertising to increase demand for their product, which shifts the demand curve up. So the point is they have to either try and lower their costs, or they have to either try to increase demand. If a monopolist is making a loss, they have to do the same thing. Either try to lower their costs, maybe they're paying wages that are too high, which is very unlikely because monopolists don't pay wages that are too high. Maybe their costs of production are too high, or maybe they can use promotional techniques to increase demand for their product. But the point is, there are high barriers to entry in a monopoly market. So if a monopolist is making abnormal profits, they will maintain those abnormal profits into the long run. Okay? Now, there's a concept called natural monopolies. Some monopolies are they are monopolies because the market can only be a monopolist. What do we mean by a natural monopoly? A natural monopoly is basically a market where there I can't write where there are sufficient economies of scale to support only one producer. If a second producer enters the market, then neither of them will achieve economies of scale. That's kind of the idea. Natural monopolies are often things like utilities. Often, not always, utilities that provide electricity. In many cities around the world, the electricity company is one. Utilities that provide water in the water pipes, gas, all of these are natural monopolies. Why? Because for one producer, for the firm to achieve economies of scale, there can only be one. It has to basically serve the entire market. If you split the market demand between two firms, neither of them achieve economies of scale. So that's what a natural monopoly is. Utilities are often, but not always, natural monopolies. Remember, a natural monopoly is a market structure where there are sufficient economies of scale to support only one producer. It's a monopoly because it's a natural monopoly. Okay? It's not a monopoly because of high barriers to entry. It's a monopoly because the market can only support one producer. Okay? So this is the diagram for a natural monopoly. Remember, economies of scale looks at the long run average cost curve. Okay? This range of output here, the average cost is still declining in the long run, and that's because there are only sufficient economies of scale to support one producer. Now, let's assume another producer enters the market, and this demand is split between two producers. So each producer will only serve half the demand. You can see at Q1, this monopolist is not achieving economies of scale. That's kind of the idea. Anyway, don't get confused by this. The idea is there's only enough economies of scale to support one producer. That's what makes a monopoly a natural monopoly. Now, let's compare perfect competition with monopoly. Okay, we know that perfect competition, so P in perfect competition, perfectly competitive firms achieve allocative efficiency, where MSB equals MSC. But in a monopoly, so the perfectly competitive market will produce at point A, will produce this quantity, QPC, and charge this price. But a monopolist is after maximizing profit. So a monopolist will actually produce a lower quantity, QM, and charge a higher price, PM. So monopolists restrict output and charge a higher price than a perfectly competitive market. And therefore, there is welfare loss associated with this. How do I know the welfare loss? It's this triangle in the diagram here. This triangle is basically the welfare loss due to the lack of allocative efficiency, the loss of efficiency, okay, due to this firm having excessive market power. Does this mean we should get rid of all monopolies? Well, no. Sometimes monopolies are monopolies because they're natural monopolies. Even if they're not natural monopolies, monopolies spend lots of money on research and development and innovating new products. Okay. And sometimes only large firms can achieve economies of scale. So these are the many reasons we allow monopolies to exist as a society, even though there's a welfare loss. So even though there's a welfare loss, that doesn't mean we should get rid of all monopolies and just turn all markets into perfectly competitive markets. Okay, so this is monopoly. Now you can see in a perfectly competitive market, this triangle here is the consumer surplus, and this triangle here is the producer surplus. That's in a perfectly competitive market. A perfectly competitive market achieves allocative efficiency. But in a monopolist, the consumer surplus shrinks to only this triangle here. The producer surplus grows to this trapezium here. But that leaves here, E and F, that's the welfare loss associated with being a monopolist. Okay? So remember, in a monopoly, there's less consumer surplus than in a perfectly competitive market. There's more producer surplus, but there is welfare loss. Okay, something to keep in mind. Any questions before I move on? I just did perfect competition and monopoly and I compared them. Now we're going to look at the other market structures that are somewhere in the middle, either oligopolies or monopolistic competition. All right. So once again, this is allocative efficiency in perfect competition versus allocative inefficiency in monopoly. We already talked about this. Remember, we said that a monopolist will always produce at a price that is higher than the marginal cost. So there is allocative inefficiency, right? Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. This gives us the QM, and you go up to get the price. P will always be higher. P will always be higher than MC. Therefore, no allocative efficiency. That's the idea. Okay, and then there's a welfare loss. The welfare loss will be this tiny triangle here. Okay, fabulous. Any questions? All right, so let's look at monopolistic competition. So perfect competition has each firm faces a horizontal demand curve. D equals MR equals AR. Monopoly faces an upward sloping demand curve. That's its AR curve. And this is the MR curve. Okay? So D equals AR and MR. Monopolistic competition also faces a downward sloping. Did I say upward sloping here? I meant downward sloping. I'm sorry. Monopolistic competition also faces a downward sloping demand curve, but the demand for its products is more elastic than a monopolist. Why? Because in a monopolistically competitive market, there are more substitutes to choose from. There are many firms offering differentiated products. So there are more substitutes. Thus, the demand curve that a monopolistic competition firm faces is more elastic, and the MR curve is twice as steep. Okay? So remember that the monopolistically competitive firm faces a more elastic demand curve than a monopoly, being somewhere between monopoly and perfect competition. Why? Because there are lots of substitutes for consumers to choose from. Okay? All right. So let's have a look at the short-run equilibrium positions of the firm in monopolistic competition. Again, there can be economic profit or abnormal profit, as I've been calling it. There can be normal profit or there can be a loss. How do I know? Well, first, I see the intersection of MR and MC. I go down. This gives me the quantity that this firm should produce. Then I go up. At this point here, I intersect with the AC. And then I go up again. At this point here, I intersect with the P. Since the price is higher than AC, there is abnormal profit equal to this rectangle here. Okay? And there is a welfare loss equal to this triangle here. That's the welfare loss. All right, let's have a look at a situation where a monopolistic competitor firm earns a normal profit. Again, MR equals MC is where I always start. Get the quantity, then go up. Get the price and get the AC. Here, it just so happens at this point, at this quantity, it just so happens that P equals AC. If P equals AC, then this firm is making a normal profit. All right. What about making a loss? Again, start at where MR equals MC. Go down, get the quantity, then go up. See where you intersect the demand curve, that's your price. See where you intersect the AC curve, that's your AC. You can see here because AC is higher than the AR or the price, there is a loss. And again, just to remind you, this here is the welfare loss. Okay, so the loss, the economic loss, is this rectangle, and the welfare loss is the triangle that I showed you previously. Okay, so these are three possible scenarios only in the short run. But in the long run, all firms in monopolistic competition can only earn a normal profit. So this is a similarity that it shares with perfect competition as a market structure. Why? Because, again, just like perfect competition, there are no or low barriers to entry, which means in the short run, if a monopolistically competitive firm is earning abnormal profit, that's going to attract competitors into the market, right? So the market supply will increase, right? And some consumers will switch to those new firms. So the firm's demand curve, the demand curve that the firm's facing will shift to the left, actually, all right? There will be over time a decrease in the demand that this firm is actually responding to, which means its MR curve also shifts to the left until those abnormal profits disappear. The main idea is when new firms enter the market, they steal some of the customers that come to each firm. So the demand curve facing each firm shifts to the left because some customers have shifted to those new competitors. So in the long run, all firms in monopolistic competition can only earn normal profit. Okay, where P equals AC, where P equals AC, there is a normal profit. By the way, normal profit isn't a bad thing. Okay, the firm is still making a profit because remember, the average cost of the firm includes the minimum profit that is given as a payment to the entrepreneur. So normal profit is not a bad thing. It's just, it's not abnormal, super awesome profit. It's just sufficient profit to keep the firm in the industry. I need you to understand that normal profit isn't a bad thing. Okay, that's something to keep in mind. Now, we saw that there is still welfare loss associated with monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition, even though all firms earn only a normal profit in the long run, there is still allocative inefficiency. There is a welfare loss. But why do we put up with these markets? Because the good thing about them is that they offer variety. Perfectly competitive markets might be the most efficient, but they're the most boring because all products are homogeneous. Monopolistically competitive markets might be inefficient compared to perfect competition, but they offer us variety. We like variety. Imagine living in a city where all restaurants are identical, their menus are identical, the taste of the food is identical. It's boring, right? But if you live in a city where there are so many different restaurants to choose from, they all offer different cuisines and different special dishes, blah, blah, blah. That makes life more interesting. We like variety, even though variety can be inefficient. Okay? All right. So remember, this is also the same diagram for oligopoly. Okay? So in an oligopoly, a collusive oligopoly, which is basically when oligopolies come together and act as a price fixing cartel. Okay, they function as a monopoly. So you would draw the same abnormal, basically they function as a monopoly. So you would draw the same abnormal profit diagram that you would draw for a monopolist in the case of a collusive oligopoly. In the case of non-collusive oligopoly, you don't have to draw a diagram, but you have to understand that prices rarely change in a non-collusive oligopoly. There is, because of high rates or high risk, because of the large amount of interdependence between the firms, firms rarely change their prices because that could set off a price war. So oligopolists prefer non-price competition. They stay away from price competition. All right, so let's quickly review. All right, so as I said, perfect competition, many firms, free entry, homogeneous products. Monopoly, single or dominant firm, high barriers to entry, no close substitutes. These are the assumptions. All right. Wow, what is going on here? There's one page missing. That's okay. Stay with me. I'm going to get it. There it is. Sorry about that. You know, I am only human. There we go. So these are the characteristics of perfect competition and monopoly. What about oligopoly? Oligopoly, there are a few large firms, high barriers to entry, and very high rates of interdependence. That's why they prefer what we call non-price competition. They rarely compete on price. What about monopolistic competition? There are many firms, free entry, like perfect competition, but product differentiation. Okay. And we already talked about the difference between total revenue and total cost. That's how we calculate profit. Abnormal profit happens when AR is greater than AC. Normal profit when AR is equal to AC. Losses when AR is less than AC. We already saw this on the diagrams, okay? And we talked about profit maximization in perfect competition in the short run and the long run. We talked about natural monopoly, profit maximization, monopoly. We talked about oligopolies, but I'm just going to quickly talk about the ideas of interdependence. Because of the high degree of interdependence between oligopolies, there's often a risk of a price war. This creates an incentive to collude, for them to come together and fix prices together, okay? But even with that incentive to collude, each of them faces an individual incentive to cheat. So they're being tugged in both directions. There's an incentive to collude and an incentive to cheat. Okay, we've seen, again, all imperfectly competitive markets, whether it's monopoly, oligopoly, or monopolistic competition, there's allocative inefficiency. Okay, and we talked about how they prefer non-price competition instead of price competition. We talked about the more elastic demand curve. All right, so what are the advantages of firms having significant market power, even though they are allocatively inefficient? So why do we allow large firms to exist, even if they're allocatively inefficient? Well, first of all, because sometimes you have to be big in order to achieve economies of scale. And this is the argument that applies to natural monopolies. Also, abnormal profits are used to finance investment in research and development and hence innovation. So these are the arguments for imperfect competition, or the arguments for monopoly and oligopoly, even if they are allocatively inefficient. However, what are the risks that society runs when it has markets that are dominated by one or a few large firms? First of all, there's risk in terms of output. Remember, imperfectly competitive firms restrict output and charge a higher price. And that means consumers have less choice. Because if there's only one or a few firms, consumers don't have as much choice. Choice is a good thing. Okay? And finally, I'm going to talk about how can the government intervene in response to abuse of market power. Okay? The government can use legislation and regulation. It can use laws to break up those large firms. Okay? It can use laws to prevent mergers and acquisitions between big firms. Okay? Lots of governments around the world have strict laws about who can merge with who and what kind of firm a large firm can acquire. Okay? Another solution is government ownership, particularly in the case of natural monopolies. A lot of natural monopolies that provide the utilities like water through the water pipes, gas, electricity, are owned by the government. Okay, and this is to prevent abuse of market power. But government ownership isn't as trendy nowadays. The most common form is fines. Okay, remember, fines, if a monopolist or an oligopolist has been investigated and there's evidence that they are abusing their market power, the government can fine them. this will increase their average cost and therefore lower their abnormal profit. Remember, fines will shift the AC curve up, so they decrease the abnormal profit earned by this monopolist or oligopolist. So if you are doing a paper 3 question and you have to talk about policies in response to abuse of market power, talk about legislation and regulation, like laws preventing mergers and acquisitions, or laws that force them to pay a minimum wage, or laws that force them to clean up their externalities, right? All of this legislation regulation helps keep monopolists and oligopolists in check. Government ownership, particularly in the case of natural monopolies, and fines. Fines are the most common. What fines do is that they raise the average cost and therefore decrease the abnormal profit. And there we go. I think I have, yeah, wow. In 36 minutes, I sped through abuse of market power. I did all the diagrams. I talked about all the main points. Now, I didn't do the whole payoff matrix. I mean, I can do that in a future video. I didn't really prepare that. It's an annoying concept, but I can do that in a future video, or I can create a separate video for that for members only. Please like, share, comment. Check out the link, the descriptions, the video description below, and become a member. You'll find lots of exclusive content for members only. And I hope I'm going to wait for like 30 seconds or so, or a minute, and see if you have any questions. Please feel free to use the chat function and ask me any questions that you might have while I hydrate, because I've been talking for 37 minutes nonstop. Sure, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for being my most loyal member and for attending all these review sessions. Your IB exam is exactly 1 month from today. Are you excited? I'm excited for you. You're welcome, Chor. Absolutely welcome. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna wait 30 more seconds. All right, as I said, please like, share, comment. By the way, in the video description below, you'll find a link to the playlist of all my review sessions so far. I've had 9 review sessions, including today. That's 9 different topics, okay? So click on the playlist in the link below, and you'll find all the review sessions. Can we run through how the welfare loss is derived? Absolutely. So I use this diagram here. Oh, I'm supposed to erase. Not. Okay. So remember, in a perfectly competitive market, allocative efficiency is achieved when MSB equals MSC. Okay, at this point here. This is when consumer surplus and producer surplus are maximized. Okay, now let's look at a monopolist. In a perfectly competitive market, this would be the consumer surplus, and this would be the producer surplus. That's in the case of perfect competition. But because this is a monopoly, the price is higher than it would be in perfect competition. PM is higher than PPPC. Okay, so the consumer surplus shrinks to this triangle here, C. Producer surplus is this trapezium here, D. Why? Because the monopolist charges a higher price, PM, but restricts quantity, QM. So that leaves this little tiny triangle here, this little tiny triangle here, E and F, that's the welfare loss. Because if the market was perfectly competitive, it would produce QPC. That's the allocative efficiency point. Okay, the allocative efficiency point happens here. And that's the price in a perfectly competitive market. So because the quantity is restricted, QM is less than QPC, this triangle here is the welfare loss. How is it derived? Well, because this triangle here is the consumer surplus, this trapezium here is the producer surplus. So this leaves, this is surplus that is lost that nobody gains. Danielle, does that answer your question? In order to see how welfare loss is derived, you have to first imagine what an allocatively efficient market would look like. In an allocatively efficient market, this whole triangle here would be the consumer surplus. But in a monopolist, it shrinks to triangle C. In a perfectly competitive market, this whole triangle would be the producer surplus, but in a monopolist, it shrinks to trapezium D, and that leaves this little triangle here as the welfare loss, Danielle. I'm glad it makes sense. Remember, to find welfare loss, you have to envision what an allocatively efficient market would look like first, and then see what what welfare is lost that nobody gains. That's what welfare loss means. Okay, Raquel, you're welcome. By the way, Raquel, in the video description below, you'll find a link to the playlist that has all of my review sessions over the past 8 or 9 weeks. I think this is session 9. Okay, Raquel, you can find 9 topics that I've reviewed, and I'm going to keep doing this until your IB exam, which is exactly 1 month from today. Also, in the video description below, you'll find links to becoming a member. There is plenty of exclusive content to help you review for your IB exam. There are about 23, 24 videos just for members. So check out the video description below. Like, share, comment, subscribe, become a member. Thank you all for your support. All right, Daniel, not Danielle. I said Danielle. I'm sorry. Daniel, are there any other questions, or Raquel, before I end this live stream? If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Chor. I think I should hire Chor as one of my marketing executives, because he comes every week and he puts this in the Chor. I really appreciate. Yeah, keep telling people to join and become members, Chor. That's what we need. Thank you very much. Daniel, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for joining. Raquel, if you have any questions, I'll give you a couple of seconds to decide if you want to ask. Awesome. Please check out the video description below, all the ways you can support the channel, and you'll find the link to the playlist, as I said. Have a great rest of your weekend. We've got 4 more of these review sessions before your IB exam, and I will be reviewing every week. Make sure you visit the community tab where you'll see my poll. This is where I poll people, ask them to vote on what topics they want me to focus on for the next review session. All right? Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you again same time next week. Bye.